This week we see the launch of one of the most anticipated open-world video games of recent memory, and also Mad Max. Hi, Peter Brown. How you doing?
Good.
Is that a nice little soft lob for you?
Yeah.
Doink. GameSpot's very own Chum Bucket. How you doing, my friend?
What the hell does that mean?
I don't know.
I love the harpoons at publishers who put out games I don't love.
Sure.
Or love.
Or you just come to work not wearing many clothes, disheveled, and just
They have a hard
overtly
time
gross.
getting shirts on me.
Yeah? Yeah, not, they sure do. Tell me about Doom. Ask me about Doom.
No. Yeah, look, people seem to think I hate Mad Max. I don't. There are parts about it I really like. That world looks amazing. Apart from a few frame rate issues, which I'm pretty sure will be patched out, the game just is rendered so well. And when you're driving, which is one of the best parts of the game in terms of gameplay, things are moving so fast, and the action is so hectic, and you have a lot of tools at your disposal, and you feel like you're participating in a Mad Max film. You know, you get the sense that like there's this movement and speed and chaos and grit and grease, and you're right in the middle of it, and that's awesome.
So what is it that doesn't work?
There are a few things that don't work. I'm going to start with, I think the most obvious thing that's on the screen right now is the hand-to-hand combat. Regardless of the game, Mad Max is not known as a character to get into fistfights. But this combat doesn't really seem suited to the game either. A lot of attention was paid to car combat, and that is definitely the most exciting. But then you have to go do these things where you're fighting enemies, and the combat system is very reminiscent of something you'd find from other Warner Brothers games like Batman or Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor, where you mash an attack button, an enemy has an icon above their head when they're going to attack. You either evade or block. This is a very simple system that, while I think many people accept it, and that's fine, and maybe they enjoy it, I don't. Because for me, if I can exploit it by literally sitting there and tapping my fingers like this to win a battle, there's no challenge. I'm not being rewarded or making good use of my time.
Yeah, and I think the nuance of that is lost on some people, where I remember like when you told me that and you were like literally saying you don't even need to look at the screen. You were just tapping it. And there was like videos before of like how in Shadow of Mordor that same thing was the case, but that was with like a high-spec character who had like very specific things unlocked. This is like right out the gate, the combat is just never really gets any better than that.
No, I mean you unlock new skills for Max, but you don't really have much control over them. They're just more contextual things that happen when an enemy is, say, to your right or your left, but you're just pressing square, and they just happen to be there. At some point, an enemy will throw an unblockable move your way, but then you just tap the right shoulder button and you're safe, and you can go back to doing what you were doing. And I don't think an extra variable that calls for one button like twice in a fight really makes the combat that much more interesting. It's, as I said in my review, it's too simple and dumbed down, and it doesn't add anything to the experience. It just feels like a waste of time, and it's like something there to pad out the gameplay.
It sounds like it's just a lot of like boring stuff you need to get through.
Sure.
Tell me about the like missions themselves, the quests. Are they interesting? Is the sort of core like loop of what you're doing in the game, is that fun?
So you spend a lot of time driving around the map, getting from one location to another, typically to take down a camp or remove like sniper posts or something. And the reason you're doing this is because you've made an agreement with the chief who's sort of running the region that you're in, and you're trying to lower the threat from enemies against them. And so by doing that, they then agree to help you get a new part for your car. This story is driven by, I need a new muffler, I need a new engine, you gotta get that grill, man. Like, that is seriously every story beat, is that you're trying to build this car.
The magnum opus.
Yeah, and the game requires you to have certain things. There was an early mission in the game where you had to have these specific parts. Before I got there, I had unlocked better stuff and had it on my car, but I couldn't continue the mission until I downgraded to these parts. So it was this weird sort of function of forcing you to get parts for your car by making you play some pretty boring stuff. And a lot of that is going into camps and doing like fistfights with guys and basically clearing the camp, right? And when you're doing those activities, you're collecting resources such as scrap. And maybe you want to save this part for the question and answer, but I'm happy to talk about my issue with scrap right now, if you like.
Yeah, actually, yeah. I didn't pick out one specific on that, but like one of the things that people were, there's a couple of like sore points that people have. Actually, interestingly enough, when we were talking about this before, people thought that you were being too picky, whereas actually the criticisms of your review seem to be very picky in their own right. One of them being that like the fact that the inventory system seems a bit cumbersome, or that you can carry too much stuff. So like, yeah, talk about that.
So everything that you purchase with scrap, which is basically shorthand for metal that you collect around the world. And no, not any metal. I mean, it's not like you can just say, hey, no one's using that fence. I'm going to take that and trade it in. You got to find these little piles of scrap. That's fine. You know, whatever. I can get past that part because that's a little gamey thing. And gamey things exist in a lot of games, you know, like such as The Witcher, which is someone pointed out to me like, well, you can carry so much stuff in The Witcher and nobody complains.
Not that much.
Well, yeah. I mean, but the difference here in Mad Max is that the world alone is a world that's built on limitations and how well equipped you are to overcome those limitations. And the game imposes this notion on you by limiting the amount of bullets you can carry.
Yeah.
Right? Things like that, like forcing you to get water, to survive. I mean, it is a game that tells you you need to struggle for survival. But it also tells you, I need you to go out and collect piles and piles and piles of metal that you can carry, even though you can't carry a few more bullets.
Yeah.
Now, maybe I should have put that detail in my review. I realized I neglected to sort of show a counterpoint to what I was saying, which is why I think it's a problem, beyond it just being inauthentic. But it's because the game tries so hard to sell you on the world's authenticity, and then when it's convenient for the gameplay to support this open world structure, it doesn't matter anymore. And if I'm trying to buy into this story, which I think the story is more important to this game than anything. Like, the car combat's great, but really you're motivated by the events at hand.
Yeah, you want to believe in the world if you're going to spend all this time in it.
Yeah, so if I want to believe in the world and the game is imposing limitations on me to make me believe in it, but then throws those away when it makes sense for itself, that's when I have a problem. I don't have a problem with games that are steeped in fantasy and never try to address the fact that, you know, everything must be logical. But this game tries so hard to put logic behind everything, except when it's convenient.
It's inconvenient for the game, yeah. I got a bunch of questions here then to that point. Johnny Webster asked via Twitter, what's the ratio of time spent on foot as opposed to in car? Thanks, dudes.
Yeah, you spend a lot of time in your car. There is the option to fast travel, which I think is bullshit in a Mad Max game, because this is all about traveling from one point to another, you know, finding opportunities of discovery, both good and bad. And so to fast travel is sort of negating the danger and threat of existing in this world. Anyway, back to the point, you drive quite a lot. The on-foot stuff is really only when you get to a base, and to get there you have to drive. So there is a lot of great stuff that's where you're in a car, and I really enjoyed those moments. Again, like Mad Max is a great game when it comes to driving. It may not have excellent controls necessarily, but the action and the sort of the thrill you get is definitely there.
Yeah, I got that when I played some at Gamescom, but then when I had to go in and actually clear out a base, I thought, okay, this is a bit cumbersome and boring. But one of the things I found particularly odd about when you were talking about the car combat, because so much of it involves like using cars to kill people, is the fact that Max is able to take a hit from a car going at like 100 miles an hour and doesn't hurt him.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I can go into a base and get in a fight with some dudes, and before I realized how exploitable the system was, I was trying to play along with it, right? Like do what it wanted me to do. And I noticed, okay, I got hit a couple times, and all of a sudden I was like, wait, I just died from like that third guy hitting me? But I remember getting run over by a car repeatedly and being fine. You can get hit by a car and you lose about 1/10 of your health. And granted, and you can do this too. You can do misty flips all day long if you time your jump properly.
And stand in fire?
You can stand in fire. The rules of this game are so broken.
Wait, not that fire.
Not every fire. That's the thing. The game doesn't teach you what like it's silly. Like I don't know how you can justify it and say, well, it's a video game, dude. It's like, yes, I guess I get that. But video games have rules.
Elements like that remind me of like you can very easily, if you were a fan of this game, just ignore that stuff and it won't bother you. Whereas if you're not in the position to do that, if you're not feeling like it's justifiable that you can like not carry weapons when you can carry all this shit, or that you can get hit by a car but get killed by 3 punches, like that's gonna be fucking irritating. Especially if the game isn't entertaining, which it sounds like it's not. It sounds like a lot of the missions are laborious and there's a lot of them to do. There
are a few where it sends you to the sort of far off corners of the wasteland and you go underground, and I really do like those because you're exploring things like a derelict airport, for example, which is kind of interesting. And you end up like walking through a huge jetliner that's all broken down, and there are these like red-eyed enemies that kind of scurry about in the shadows, and like I like that sense because it's building the world. But then you fight them and it's the same old combat, and you know you're literally just doing fetch quests, or you're going to clear out a dungeon more or less.
Some folks were giving out that there was some sort of spoiler about the ultimate ending climactic fight, perhaps.
Okay.
Maybe it's not.
The fight I described comes towards the end of the game. It is not the final conflict. But I really have to ask people, if you're playing a Mad Max game, which is built around car combat, and there is a main antagonist, do you not expect that you are going to enter into car combat with that antagonist? I just want people to think critically about this, because while I may have given away an element that happened in the story, if you were surprised, I'm sorry. But I imagine that anyone who understands what this game is and who the characters are, that's not surprising. And I didn't talk about the story, by the way. I talked about a battle that you get into. I was telling you earlier, it's like, you play a Final Fantasy VII, it's like telling your buddy you fight Sephiroth, and he's like, la 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 la.
Sephiroth?
What? No.
Son of a bitch. I'm actually, like, everyone in the office will attest to this, I am the most irritating person when it comes to spoilers. Like, the amount of, like, times I've been like, la 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 la, when people were talking about innocuous details about Until Dawn. But I have often, like, rallied to the community when it comes to when there is. Kevin was a frequent spoilerer in tweets and stuff all the fucking time, and sometimes in his reviews as well. But even I found that to just be a little bit too much, considering it's not actually the ultimate ending of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't tell you the outcome. All I do is say you enter into car combat later in the game with the main bad guy.
Who knew?
I'm sorry.
I'm a little bit disappointed because it looked like Mad Max was got, like, it seems like a sort of a by the number. You know what this looks like, actually? It looks like the type of open world game which, if it came out 5 years ago, probably would have been fine.
Yeah.
But we've
graduated.
Like, this is the year that The Witcher 3 came out. This is the year that Metal Gear Solid, the Phantom Pain comes out, and obviously we don't, like, merit other games against other games, but, like, the goalposts change. And it's like, if a game like Infamous was to come out, which just kind of, mirrors some aspects of it, seems, like, we wouldn't address it the same way. In fact, when we had Mike Mahardy on the couch last week talking about Gears of War, or Jeff Gerstmann on Giant Bomb giving Gears of War 1 2 out of 5, a game that he adored. Yeah. Like, this is what happens, is that, like, what we expect of these types of games changes, and I guess I can see why if some people have lower expectations or they want to love a game so much, then they get particularly hurt when they see critical assessments not landing where they wanted them to.
And I want to say other outlets, other reviewers gave a lot of praise to Mad Max where I didn't enjoy it. And
some gave it lower. Some
gave it lower. Yeah, and that's the nature of reviews. I have my own opinions, and so do you out there, and, like, that's great. I don't think we should really be critical of each other for having opinions. And frankly, my opinion of this game is that there's too much stuff that is not developed enough or thought out well enough to make it that interesting and enjoyable to play. But the stuff that I do like, car combat, the world itself, some of the characters, that's excellent. And I think if you have the time and you're interested in the game, that you should play it for those things. Just expect that it's not going to be all great.
Peter Brand, thanks so much for coming on.
Always.
Really appreciate it. Stick around. We're going to talk to you in a little bit about other open world games. But you watching at home, here, live, or via YouTube, GameSpot, and whatnot, let us know what you think of Mad Max. Our review is up on GameSpot.com. You can go check it out there, and let us know if you're playing the game, what you think of it. Do you agree or do you disagree? Stick it in the comments.